Some of the most powerful stories aren't really about what's said out loud. It's all about what's left unsaid. And today, we're going to dive deep into a short story called Muscle Memory that just masters this craft. It builds this entire incredible narrative on a foundation of total silence. So, get this. The author, Elizabeth Hoban, was given this exact prompt. Write a story where two characters talk around an important subject without ever mentioning it directly. And that's the whole puzzle at the heart of this thing. The entire story is basically her answer to that challenge. So, how do you build up all that tension, reveal a huge tragedy, and even find some hope without ever actually naming the main event? Let's break it down and see how she pulled it off.
All right, so we're going to put on our literary detective hats for this one. We're going to unpack this massive unspoken history between two people, Madelyn and Mark, who just bump into each other after years of being apart.
So the scene opens in a quiet department store. Madelyn sees her estranged husband, Mark, and right away, the air becomes, and I'm quoting the author here, suspended and electric. That tension is just instant. And you realize it's all happening in the subtext. And just look at the huge gap here between what they say and what they do. Their first exchange is one single simple word, hi. But Madelyn's physical reaction, it tells a whole different story. Her body language, that's pain, that's protection, that's this deep, shared history that a simple hi could never, ever get across. It's a perfect example of show, don't tell. And then you get this line, wow, two people stitched together by years of unraveling. In just one sentence, she sums up their entire relationship. It does the work of pages and pages of backstory, right? It tells us they were once stitched together, but their whole history now is just unraveling. We don't know why just yet, but man, you can feel the weight of it.
So as Madelyn and Mark start to make small talk, you realize it's this masterclass in revealing huge pain. Seriously, every single topic they touch on is like a ghost of what they can't actually bring themselves to say.
Take their creative projects. They're not just hobbies, They're these powerful metaphors for their entire lives. Madelyn's unfinished canvases, that's the life she feels she can never get back to. And Mark's abandoned sci-fi novel, that stands for all of his abandoned dreams. Their art literally becomes a stand-in for the grief they're both drowning in.
And then you hit this key moment. When the conversation gets just a little too close to the truth, Madelyn suddenly blurts out, Bailey died. And this is pure deflection. The emotional weight gets to be too much, so she brings up the death of their dog, Bailey. Now, that's a real, painful loss for sure, but it's a manageable one. It's a classic defense mechanism, right? It lets them talk about grief without having to touch the unbearable central tragedy they're both desperately avoiding.
Okay, so now the author starts leaving this trail of breadcrumbs for us. She's basically turning us, the readers, into detectives, forcing us to piece together what really tore these two apart.
And before we get the full picture, Mark drops this incredibly raw admission. He says he wakes up from nightmares clutching the air. And that just reveals the sheer scale of the trauma he's carrying. He's not just sad, he is completely haunted. This line is designed to get us ready for something absolutely devastating.
And here are the clues, laid out for us one by one. Madelyn starts recounting their decisions. This desire for a bigger house, a better life. First, the house. The goddamn house on Country Club Lane. Then, the pool. The built-in pool. Then, the dock. She was the one who insisted on getting Bailey the puppy. And then, the horrible chain of events. A stray golf ball lands in the pool, and the dog just bounds in after it. And then, she just stops. She can't say the name of who followed him in.
The unspoken truth is that they lost their 5-year-old son in the pool that day.
And that is the story's silent, beating heart. By holding this fact back, by forcing us to piece it all together, the author makes us feel the weight of that tragedy in a way that just stating it up front never, ever could.
But here's the thing. The story doesn't just end in tragedy. In fact, that painful conversation becomes the very first step toward finding some kind of hope. Not by erasing the past, but by finally acknowledging it. And for what feels like the first time, they actually voice the individual guilt they have each been carrying all this time. Mark admits he ran away, calling himself a coward who was just overwhelmed by his own pain. And Madelyn confesses her own greedy ambition for that perfect life, the one that ultimately led to the accident. By sharing these feelings, they finally start to share the burden, instead of carrying it alone.
And then you get this wonderful little plot twist. It turns out the very reason Madelyn was even in that store to buy a gift for a wedding is a wedding they are both invited to. It's a catalyst, you see. It's not their own love story, but someone else's that gives them a chance to reconnect and maybe, just maybe, find a new path forward.
So Mark asks her, "Well, I hope you'll save me a dance?" And this simple question, it's so much more than just an invitation to dance. In fact, Madelyn points out that he hates dancing. So this isn't about a tango. It's about trying again. It's this small, hopeful gesture towards starting a completely new kind of rhythm together.
Madelyn's final thought just wraps this all up so beautifully. She realizes that maybe this was the only way to heal. They found each other again because of someone else's love. It's this powerful idea that their own love was just shattered by grief, but through celebrating another couple's love, they find a path back. It suggests that sometimes healing doesn't just come from within. Sometimes the world has to reach back out to you.
So as we wrap up this deconstruction, it really leaves us with a fascinating question to think about in our own lives, doesn't it? We all have stories we tell, and we all have stories we keep silent. So what are those unspoken narratives? The ones we talk around but never actually name. What do they say about our deepest pains, our greatest hopes, and maybe who we truly are?